Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we're looking at the SH Figuarts Tiger and Bunny Barnaby Brooks Jr. This is the basic version of Barnaby Brooks Jr., or Bunny. I've showed you the darkness version, and I showed you the movie version, and now we're going to look at the original version, because I realized I never reviewed it before. So here it is. It's a fairly basic figure. It's not going to be very much new to, that's not how you say that. It's not going to be particularly new to most of you who have seen the other reviews. In fact, it's the exact same figure as the darkness version, just with the original colors. So it's going to be exactly like that, but a little bit different than the movie version. So if you're looking for a traditional looking Barnaby Brooks, this is one to grab. It's a pretty good figure. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Okay, before we measure the height on this guy, I'm going to get real with you guys. Don't you hate it when somebody's reviewing a figure or taking photos of a figure or anything that involves a figure, and then they do something like I just did and have it rotating around the display stand with this piece off center? Or is that just my undiagnosed OCD kicking in? I don't know, but I hate it, and I apologize that I made it look like that before I let it rotate around the display stand. Okay, so now we can get on with the review. How tall is he? He stands just about, let's call it 15.5. That's to the top of his ears because they stick up just a little bit. The head's just a little bit shorter than that, and that makes him just about 6 1/4, a little bit less than 6 1/4. And yeah, these guys are really cool figures. They're fairly basic. There's nothing crazy going on in terms of engineering, but they generally have a good bit of paint on them. Now, the two original versions, this Barnaby and then the original Wild Tiger, don't have the most intricate sculpts, but you can see it's definitely got a little bit of sculpt work going on and a fair amount of paint. You can see there's a little bit of a really dark pink going on in that stripe area, and even down here in a little bit of a finer stripe. Very well painted, lots of nice detail work throughout the chest. The face is a particularly good example of how nicely they executed these figures. Very well done. Now, he doesn't have any particularly crazy details going on underneath his shoulder pads. He's just got really floppy, loose shoulder pads on top of his shoulders. For the forearms, it's pretty much the same. There's not a whole lot going on underneath. A little bit of sculpt and paint, but not much. And then, of course, we do have the branding logos, and really not much going on inside these back pieces. So yeah, it's not the most crazily detailed figure in the world, but it does have a really nice execution for what is there. Now, as far as accessories go, we have an alternate forearm armor piece, which has the Amazon.co.jp logo, so you can swap that out for the either of them. I believe it's universal, yeah. So you can put it on either side, though it's really meant for the right side because of the orientation of the text. But nicely executed. We have a couple of extra hands. So we have the 2 fist hands, and then we have 2 open hands. Very nice detailing on those. And then we have the good luck mode, which is a whole alternate leg. So I'm not going to show you a photo of that. I'm actually going to show you that manually. So we have the whole extra leg. Okay, the whole right leg is a separate piece. And we have our full knee joint. And then, of course, the hip will be the same once you swap it onto the figure. You can see that it's going to be just the same. And then the foot is on a big ball peg. So this is really not meant to be like he's walking around with this or anything. It's for a very specific pose, which is him jumping and kicking. Or standing and kicking, I guess. But it's really just for that. So it's kind of like Luffy's Gum Gum Pistol type thing. Or Gum Gum Rocket, or whatever you want to say. It's just for a particular type thing. But it's very well executed. So it's a nice piece to have. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus. Very nicely done. And then we have this. We have the display stand, which looks very nice. I like that they all have their own display stands with their names and stuff on them. And they're color-coded, so that's pretty cool. And then, of course, we have our traditional acrylic upright on that display stand for the action poses. Now let's go ahead and talk about the articulation. This guy has, just like Wild Tiger, a hinge at the top of his neck for his head, and then the neck itself is on a ball peg for the rotation and everything else. However, you can see he's got a collar that goes really high up, so you're pretty much just going to get to use that hinge and that ball peg for leaning in forward. Rotating side to side is just for the tiniest bit of posing. It's not going to be incredibly useful, just enough. About 45 degrees in either direction, maybe not even that much. Yeah, it's a little bit shy of that, so pretty limited there. For the shoulders, you already saw the shoulder pads are just loose, floaty shoulder pads, so they pretty much just go around with the arm. and the arm can only go up about that far. Not a crazy amount, but probably enough. It's connected on a ball peg, so that's good. And then, of course, you saw the hinge in use already. Full rotation, no problem there. Bicep swivel, no issues. Double jointed elbow, you get a hinge down here in the forearm, and then you get the big round hinge that you can see there pretty obviously. And you get really good range out of it. And I do like these joints a lot because they're not ugly. They look pretty good in pretty much any pose, so that's nice. Now these guys do just pop off, so you can get to the hands, and you can pop the hands off for interchanging them. It's just a single ball peg. Nothing crazy there. But that's fine. I don't think you usually need much more than a single ball peg for your wrist articulation, so no big deal. Let's pop this guy back on. It's not on. There we go. And then for the torso, I think it's just a ball peg. A single ball peg for the upper torso. Very limited though. It's mostly just going to be a swivel. You don't get much out of it. For the lower torso, you get a little bit more, but still not very much. So you're going to have to use them both in conjunction in order to really pose him too much. It's mostly just going to be swivels. If you're only getting one, I would definitely suggest getting the later model, the Rising version. I think it's called Rising, right? The movie version. But yeah, these guys still look good, and I've said "but yeah" a few times in this video. I apologize about that, guys. I'm going on not much sleep and a lot of caffeine, and I ate about 100 cookies today, so there's a lot of sugar in my system, so I apologize for a bunch of things. We do have a little tiny ball peg for these guys, which let them move around, but not too much, so don't expect to get much out of that. For the hips, we have our standard Figuarts drop-down or hinged ball peg, so you can get pretty good range out of them. Not too much, though. They're fairly limited, and because we have the die cast in the feet and the joints are pretty loose, it's problematic. It's an older figure, and die cast isn't necessarily a good thing, so you're gonna have to be careful with the posing. The knees are pretty functional, not the best looking, but pretty good. You do get a thigh swivel in the leg, by the way, but it doesn't do very much. And then for the ankles, it's a good design, but they're generally kind of loose. His aren't particularly bad. We have a little bit of a hinge going forward and back, not too much. We have a true ankle rocker, which doesn't give you a ton of range, but it is there. And then we have our toe hinge, which again doesn't give you a ton of range, but it is there. Nicely detailed bottom of the foot. So these guys, this particular one, the older ones, not particularly impressive. Definitely good enough. They're aesthetically very pleasing. Functionally, they don't have the best articulation, but if you get them in a cool pose or can find a couple of cool poses and just want to leave them on a shelf, I definitely recommend them for that. They're also very inexpensive at this point. I know Big Bad Toy Store has a couple of them on hand still, and they're all marked down pretty low, but even if you have to track them down on eBay or whatever, you can get them for really cheap. So with that in mind, these guys are definitely worth picking up. Just be aware that they're older, they have a lot of loose joints. Sometimes anyway, they can have a lot of loose joints. And they don't have the best functional articulation, but they do look really cool. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.